This is the Achilles Connect for October. This is the New York City Marathon special Achilles Connect, where we're going to go over all things New York City Marathon. To my right is Casey. What's up, Casey?
Again.
Casey is going to, well, this is the recorded version of your introduction. This is the more formal Casey version. So yeah, Casey's going to make sure we don't go off track too much. This is all things New York City Marathon. We're going to start off by talking about, what are we talking about? Oh yeah, the mile by mile preview of the marathon course. And so especially for those for whom this is their first New York City Marathon, but even if it's not your first, just kind of get an idea of what the course looks like, right? When are you hitting each borough? When are the big kind of points to look out for, the big bridges? Sort of the deceptive areas of the course where you want to be a little more aware. That's the first part. Second part, we're going to go over the Spectator's Guide. And so that's if you have friends watching, or if you yourself are not running, but you want to spectate. This is the, how do I see X person 5 times during the whole marathon, or 6 times, or 3 times, or whatever it is. So we're gonna go over that. And then finally, we're going to close out with athlete/guide race day journey, right? So you get your bib from the expo, the buses, the start areas, baggage, post-finish race area, all that good stuff we're going to kind of go over. Again, especially if this is your first time, you have no idea what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen in Staten Island, right? Is there food provided? Like, we don't know. So we're going to talk all about that in this Connect. And then if you have questions throughout, just put them in the chat. Casey will be monitoring. If I don't answer your question, it's because Casey didn't give it to me, so you can blame her, not me. And yeah, that's about it. So we're going to get started. First topic, mile by mile New York City Marathon course preview. For those who don't know, the marathon is 26.2 miles. They actually do measure it. A little fun fact, as you're on the course, you're going to see a blue line, and that blue line will take you from Staten Island to Central Park finish. And that's what you call the world record line. And that means that that is the line that is used by the course marshals to measure it, to certify that it is actually 26.2. If you watch the guys and gals who are going to win the race, most of the time they're going to be right on that line, because that is the shortest possible line from start to finish, and which is why they call it the world record line. That's kind of the line where it's like, if you're on it, you're not veering too much, you're not going outside too much. That's the line that is actually measured 26.2 miles. So a little fun fact, if you see the blue line, you're probably going in the right direction. The 50,000 other people running in the same direction is also a good indication that you're going the right direction. We start on the Verrazano Bridge. It starts on an uphill. And so that's something kind of, key to remember, where you are starting a 26.2 mile race and you are starting uphill. So don't just immediately sprint up this hill. Similarly, you're going to be on the bridge. And a lot of times that bridge will actually interfere with your Garmin watch or your other GPS watch. And so, for example, if your marathon goal pace is a 10-minute pace, first of all, you should not be hitting 10-minute pace going uphill, right? Because you're going uphill. It should be a little slower. And second of all, not necessarily the most accurate reading from your watch, because you are going uphill under the bridge and all that stuff. So expect your watch to be completely off the first mile or two, and you just got to be okay with that, right? Just kind of ease into the race. You have plenty of time to run a little faster and make up for lost time later if you do start off a little too slow. But just take the first mile easy. It's going to be really exciting. Stay a little to the side if you are not a super fast runner, because you're going to have a ton of people from behind you trying to overtake you. And that's valid for the first, I'd say for the first 8 miles at least, right? Where you're going to have a lot of fast people in wave 1 who are going to be overtaking, depending on if they start on the top of the bridge or the bottom of the bridge. If you're an athlete with disability or you're racing with Achilles, you will be starting on the bottom of the bridge. And so that's just, there's no variability there. We are starting at the bottom. Miles 3 to 8, we're in Brooklyn. And that's pretty cool because Brooklyn is flat, pretty straight for the most part. So you're not dealing with a lot of turns. So whether you're on a hand cycle, a racing wheelchair, if you're blind and your guide's giving you direction, There's not a lot of that direction going on in Brooklyn. Obviously, there's some turns and stuff, but comparatively to other boroughs, Brooklyn, you're pretty straight, it's pretty wide, it's not very technical, which is a very good way to kind of get into the race, right? Start off kind of simple. Miles 9 to 12, you're in Queens. Now, Queens is a little bit more turny, is a little bit more rugged. The roads are a little choppier. And so things get a little more technical once you hit Queens, but you're only there for 3 miles. Miles 13 to 15, you're on the Queensboro Bridge. I'd say this is probably the hardest part physically for the marathon. It's because you're going up Queensboro Bridge for a really long time. It's going to feel like an hour just going up this bridge. And you're used to the first 13 miles of it being really loud and everyone's cheering and the crowds are carrying you and everything's really energized and electric. And you hit this bridge and there's not a single spectator allowed on the bridge. And so it's going to be like dead quiet. All you hear are the footsteps of other runners, and you're just there left with your thoughts, and the thoughts tend to be really depressing. And so that's usually when people start getting a little sad because you're just there for almost 2 miles, just on this bridge on your own with your own thoughts. You come off of the bridge and you get onto First Avenue, and First Avenue will carry you miles, let's say 16 to like 19. First Avenue is a little deceptive. First, because you're coming from this really quiet place to just a wall of noise. You're going to have thousands and thousands of people watching from both sides of First Avenue, yelling, screaming. You'll probably see your friends. And it's slightly uphill the entire way. And so with that energy, you're going to be tempted to speed up. And the biggest tip I have is don't speed up, don't succumb, because you're at mile 16. You still have 10 miles left, right? This is not the time to sprint. But people will do that. You'll see as you come off the bridge, if you kind of pay attention to runners around you, their pace will just pick up. And that's this. So don't do that. Stay disciplined on your pace. Keep your pace nice and steady and even. And just use it as a time to kind of recalibrate, right? You're back into the world. You came out of this silent bridge situation. Now you're on First Avenue, grab some drinks, like say hi to friends, but just keep the pace dialed back. And you'll be thankful once you hit the Bronx, because Bronx, it's not super long. It's only mile 20 to 22 approximately. It has a lot of turns. The roads tend to be really choppy, so more technical, more mental focus is required, right? Higher cognitive load. If you're guiding, you're going to be giving a lot of cues, a lot of turns, things like that. And if you did sprint or pick up your pace on First Avenue, the Bronx is where you're going to pay for it. And that's where I kind of paid for it last year, but that's where a lot of people pay for it, because you just expended all that energy. Now you're just doing all these turns and stuff in the Bronx, and that takes you again from mile 20 to 22. Now after 22, you come back down into Manhattan, down Fifth Avenue. This is mile 23 and onwards, and it's going to feel like you're running back to the finish, right? You're going to have this a little bit of sense of relief. You have 3 miles left. You're running towards the finish line, sort of, right? So it's kind of motivational in that respect. But you also have to remember a lot of the last 3 miles is a slight uphill. So if you feel like, oh my God, like I'm, expending the same amount of effort I did before, but I'm going slower, just know in the back of your head that you're going slightly slower because, well, first of all, you just ran 23 miles. So obviously you're going to go a little slower, but also because a lot of it is this slight uphill that is slight enough that you don't really notice or realize unless you're really paying attention to it. And then you come down Fifth, you re-enter Central Park at 90th and 5th, Engineers Gate, which is where Achilles Manhattan meets for our runs. And once you're in the park, you're kind of home stretch, right? You go south in the park. One part that people don't really realize, if you are not familiar with the marathon course, is that you actually exit the park again at Central Park South. And so you think you're like going to come around the bottom of the park and finish right there. You see all the people start exiting the park and you're like, oh no, like where are they going? Like the finish line is not that way. It's the other way. Like we're kind of mad at the course because, you're like exiting. But so you'll get spit out right at 5th and 59th. And then you'll hang a right to go west across 59th Street from the east side of the park to the west side of the park. And then at Columbus Circle on the west side of 59th, you'll re-enter Central Park there. And then it's again an uphill to the finish. You don't really notice the uphill because you you hear the music, the fans are cheering, all that stuff. And so you don't really notice the uphill, but it is an uphill finish. And you end right in front or near Tavern on the Green, which is the west side in the 60s of Central Park. And that's 26.2 miles. So it's helpful to know, especially if you are a blind athlete or if you're guiding a blind athlete. Good to know, because then you can give that kind of verbal commentary and that, that context. And even if you're not blind, like, it's good to know where you're running, right? Because now you can chunk up the race, right? Races are a lot more attainable, large feats, whether it's, if a 5K is a large feat for you, a marathon, 100-mile or ultra, whatever it is, it's a lot easier to tackle these big events if you break them up into smaller chunks and you tackle those smaller chunks one at a time. It's a lot easier to kind of grasp and conceptualize. So that's the marathon course. What do you think, Casey? Would you ever run this marathon?
See if I could run it with you.
You'd run it with me?
Well, yes. Run is a strong word.
Yeah.
It might be just like a nice jog.
Have you ever spectated the race, Casey?
Of course I have.
Tell me about it.
It's like the best day ever. I feel like, you just feel like a rock star all day long. And I feel like you meet so many new friends too. Cheering everyone with their names on their shirt. Go, Billy, go. I don't know Billy, but now I do. I'm his biggest fan.
That's actually a really good point. If it is your first time and you don't realize, people do actually put their names on their shirts. And it's cool because then you can get people to yell your name out, which, if you're into that, go for it. I personally, I generally don't put my name on my shirt because I want to know that if someone says my name, it's someone that I know, or that someone who knows me. And so for me, I get that little bit of spike of adrenaline when someone yells my name, because I know that they know who I am, right? It's not just reading a thing on my shirt. So it varies. Sometimes my guides will put like Team Francesco, or, they'll put all three of our names on their shirts, or all three of our names on their shirts. And so it kind of varies like that. Other people will come up with a fun name for their guide crew. I know my roommate will be Team Panda, because that's his like spirit animal. So you can kind of get creative with it, be really fun with it. Yeah. And so that's the general mile by mile idea of the marathon course. After this meeting, I'll send out a much more detailed version of all three of these sections, but just for the sake of like not putting all of you to sleep, that's the general overview of, like, if you want to know the bare minimum, that's kind of what you need to know. Next, we're going to go over to the Spectator's Guide. And so again, this is for if you want to tell your friends where to see you, if you are yourself a friend of a runner. First thing to do is to download the Marathon app. And what that will let you do is track your runner. Now, it is worth mentioning that if you kind of extend past mid-afternoon, the app in the past has been a little bit buggy, but it's generally, it gets you within the ballpark of where your runner is. If the runner has a Garmin watch or an Apple Watch or Strava running, anything like that, there is a way to share a tracking link directly from their GPS device to you. And that tends to be a little more accurate because, right, you're getting like that direct signal of where your athlete is from their Garmin or from their phone. And that's important because that's how you kind of calculate out what time you have to be at all these places. Right, you take their total time, you say, okay, this athlete, is doing a, say, 4.5-hour marathon, and that works out to be about a 10-minute, 15-second pace, right? So you can kind of do that math and be like, all right, a mile 3 times 10, 15, they'll vaguely be at mile 3 at like 30 minutes and 45 seconds, right? Obviously very rough because you don't know what happens on race day, but you can get a general idea like that. So here again, and I'll send a much more detailed example of a Spectator's Guide after this, but here's just some thoughts as to where you can potentially meet up with someone.
Can you, before
Yeah.
you start that, we just got a quick question.
What's up?
Could you just explain to the friends why guides themselves don't get tracked?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically, and this can be different from race to race or from race organization to race organization, typically within New York road runners, and again, this is a road runners thing, guides are there, right, to facilitate the race for the athlete. And so guides, because they don't have to pay for a race, won't get stuff like 9+1 credit. And part of what goes along with that is because they aren't racing themselves, right? They're facilitating for their athlete. They don't get a finish time. Now, other race organizations will still give guides times. This is just the road runners policy on guide timing. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So, first place to think about meeting up with your athlete is actually about 3.5, 3.2 miles into the marathon. And if you remember our marathon preview just now, that's in Brooklyn. And this is Bay Ridge. And so, well, let me back up. If you're driving in or you're kind of commuting into the city with a vehicle, Lower Manhattan is a good spot to park it because it's central enough, but you're not really encountering much of the road closures or road shutdowns and stuff like that. Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, mile 3.2. That's a good like first spot. The NNR trains will take you there. So you can get on the NNR trains, take it to Bay Ridge. That's a good first spot. You gotta again, do the math to figure out like what time vaguely you think your athlete will be there based on what time they start. If you're an Achilles person, you're starting at 9:10. And so you kind of do the math based on pace. But Bay Ridge is good. The second place is downtown Brooklyn around mile 8. And that's same trains, NR trains will take you there. You take it back the Manhattan bound way, the NNR, and you get out at Barclays. And that about a block from that station, you'll see the mile 8 marker. And that'll kind of help your, again, assuming you can get on the train pretty quickly, and depending on how fast your athlete is going, that can be a second spot where you catch your athlete. The third place is in Queens, actually, right at the Queens and Brooklyn. The Pulaski Bridge is actually what connects Brooklyn to Queens. And so you can catch them right at that bridge. And so the way you do that is you take the NR back into Grand Central Station, which is in Manhattan. You jump on the 7 train and you take the 7 train one stop to Vernon and one stop into Queens. 3 blocks from there is that bridge, the Pulaski Bridge on the Queens side, right about mile 13, 13-ish. And that's where you can catch your athletes coming from Brooklyn into Queens. That's usually when people's steam start running out, by the way, because Brooklyn is really flat, energy's high. That's kind of when people start realizing like, oh, we're running a marathon today. Like it's going to be a long day. And so that's the third spot. Fourth spot is if they jump back on the train, 7, get back into Manhattan, and then from Grand Central Station, jump on the 4, 5, or 6 train and take it up basically anywhere between 59th Street and 96th Street, I'd say. Because 59th is where the athletes are coming off of the Queensboro Bridge onto First Avenue, right? And that's about mile 15 and a half-ish. Also, all the way from 59th up to 96, you can basically get off the subway at any point within that, walk east to First Avenue, and you can catch your athletes coming up. If your athlete is a little faster, you might want to catch them a little higher up because it gives you time to, take the subway up to say 96th Street, walk over so you can still catch them. That's a good fourth spot. And then a fifth spot, I'd say, is after you see them on First Avenue, wherever you choose, let's say 96 and First, for example. After you see them there, while your athlete is running around the Bronx, you just walk directly west from First Avenue and 96 to Fifth Avenue and 96th Street. And you catch them as they're running back down from the Bronx down into Central Park. So that's kind of a very rough, outline of if you want to catch a person 5 times. If you don't like the person as much and you don't want to see them 5 times and you want something to cut out, I'd say cut out Brooklyn, just because, again, because it's so early. I would rather, if people are coming out to see me, for example, I would probably tell them, come see me later, because that's when it's really gonna, that's when it's gonna hurt. And so that's where it might help more. So, definitely catch the 2 spots in Manhattan, because that's just easy, right? You start on first and you come across on fifth. That's an easy way to watch people. If you want a third way, do that Pulaski Bridge, mile 13, kind of border of Brooklyn and Queens on the 7 line. That's like a good kind of third line. And as athletes are coming into the finish, it's hard to get from Fifth Avenue to the finish line. Taking a crosstown, say on 86th Street, from east to west, and then walking your way down from 86 and Central Park West down to 72nd Street, or, our athletes, Achilles athletes, will exit on 72nd. If you're not here to watch an Achilles athlete, then they'll probably exit a little further north. So that's a pretty general Spectator guide. What do you think about that, Casey?
I think that's great. That's very helpful. I'm gonna be tracking you and taking the train all over the city. I'm ready.
That's a very mindful way to watch someone, one might say. Right. Okay.
I got another question for
What's
you,
up?
for guides specifically. If we aren't running with anyone, is there anything we can do to help out the day of the race? For example, is there an Achilles cheer section?
There will be an Achilles cheer session. It's not finalized yet. Basically, if you're interested in volunteering to do anything that week, just email nyc@achillesinternational.org, and we'll get your interest. Just write out like what you'd be willing to do or what you're interested in, and we'll pair you up. And yes, we will be sending out cheer station information closer to the race. But otherwise, if you want to volunteer, do something, just email nyc@achillesinternational.org, and we'll get you set up with the right people. Cool. All right. And then the last thing we're going to plow through real quick is, what does the race day look like for Achilles athletes and guides, right? Like, what happens? And so we're just going to run through a very, comprehensive checklist. Like, this is kind of the order of what happens. And again, I'll send out a more detailed version of this after this. And so it all starts on race week, right? You go to the expo. The expo's at the Jacobs Javits Center. That's where the car show is too, by the way, and Comic-Con. So if you go to either one of those, it's the same place. You get your bib, you got to sign up for a spot. Hopefully you show up, both athlete and guide show up together, just because, it's fun to do that as a group. Friday night pasta dinner at the Hard Rock. Sunday morning, there are 2 waves of buses. If you're a wheeler, what? Oh yeah, Saturday morning, come to my workout, 90th and 5th, it's 9:30 a.m. It's going to be really fun. We're going to shout out a lot of people. It'll be so many people. That's Saturday morning.
Achilles athletes from all over the world.
Achilles athletes from all over the world.
Teammates from far and wide, everyone.
Yeah, they'll be there. Mongolian athletes, Norwegian athletes, all the stuff. So you can come meet people. It'll be really fun. That's one of the cool things about this weekend, is you get to meet Achilles members from all across the world. So that's Saturday morning. Sunday morning, race morning. It's really early. I'm not going to tell you the bus times, because there's 2 different bus times, and you will get an email based on which bus time you should be at. But suffice it to say, it'll be on Fifth Avenue, and it's really early. Don't be late. If you miss that bus, you can still probably get to the start in time, but it's going to really overstress your morning. So just don't be late. Make the bus. Once you sit on the bus, you're going to be on the bus for like an hour and a half. And so what a lot of people will do is they'll just sleep on the bus. Like I think I slept like an hour last year on the bus. And so once you get to Staten Island, it's around 7 o'clock. You have about 2 hours from 7 to say 9 to just chill. There's a tent, there's some beverages, there's bagels, get Gatorade, just light food, stuff like that. Some people will bring breakfast because, if they want like 4 or 5 in the morning, a little too early to eat, right? Because then you're just there for 5 hours before you start running. It's a little bit too much time. You're going to get hungry, a little too much. So sometimes people will actually bring like a sandwich or peanut butter or something like that to eat at that start village in the start tent. There are porta potties, there's accessible porta potties. And again, you got about an hour and a half to 2 hours, just hang out, relax. sit down. There are chairs there. Don't be standing, like jumping around, being all excited because you're there with your friends and then the race starts and you're tired, right? So sit down, relax. The race starts at 9:10. You're going to do the race. We just talked about the course preview. There is baggage, by the way, provided for Achilles athletes. If you have a cane, you have crutches, you have something you need to check to the finish line, we do have that available at the start tent. You do the race, you finish the race. There will be Achilles people at the finish line to guide you and point you in the right direction so that you don't follow the crowds up the west side of the park. Instead, you exit the park at 72nd Street and you go to the post-race. Sometimes they call it the reunion area, the post-race finish area, whatever they call it. It's on 72nd Street between Columbus and Central Park West. That's where you get reunited with your belongings that you checked at the beginning of the race. You can sit there. There's some beverages. You can kind of collect yourself, recover. And once you recovered, you make your way out. Now, I would not suggest relying on Uber or Lyft or any sort of driving situation because the traffic is insane. We will have van transportation to provide transport for any athlete and guide returning to the team hotel. So all of our out-of-town athletes will have that option. There's also the B and the C train is right on Central Park West. And you have the 1, 2, and 3 trains, which are on Amsterdam and 72nd Street. So if I were you, and there are also buses, but again, with the traffic, I would not count on buses. If I were you, I would highly suggest figuring out a route to get to wherever you're staying using those trains, because those trains will be the least delayed. And yeah, that's kind of the crash course. Casey, what do you think?
I think that's awesome. Great. We got a few messages here in the chat.
Tell me.
First one, not necessarily a question, but someone told me to bring toilet paper for the start village. How do you feel about that? Any thoughts on that?
I think anytime there's porta potties, you should bring toilet papers and wet wipes. That is just any race bag I have, right? Your bag pre-race, wet wipes and toilet paper.
Absolutely.
Maybe some hand sanitizer too.
Always post-COVID hour. Always got your hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
And this is a good message too, just to remind everyone that the start buses and the Achilles tent is only for our athletes and guides. So if you're just a supporter or a charity entrant, not you guys. It's not the Achilles bus and it's not the Achilles start area. It is the athlete with disability bus and athlete with disability start area. So yes, correct. Thank you.
Be aware. And that's not us making those rules, it's Roadrunners. So if you want to get in some hot water, just do the right thing.
Next up, we have someone who missed this new start time email. So where can our friends access this recording?
You will get a video, what's the word I'm looking for? Replay link sent out. If not today, then tomorrow. So you can catch the whole thing and speed it up, because that's probably the best way to consume my voice is sped up.
And then looks like the last question we got is, what are the details for the Friday night activities?
Friday night, again, this will be sent. So the whole week's events will be sent out in an email. But Friday night, we have the Friday night pasta dinner, which is RSVP required. And it's for athletes and guides and some, I think charity runners. Yeah, charity runners. For the New York City Marathon, and it's at the Hard Rock Friday night. Yeah. I will be emceeing it, which I probably shouldn't have mentioned because now you won't come. I'll scare everyone away. So yes, I will not be emceeing it, but actually I will be. And we're doing a cool thing where we're like kind of highlighting the different chapters that's coming in for it. The runner show is almost done and it's looking to be really cool. So as long as I don't mess up any names or mess up the order, then we will be set. Cool, Casey?
Cool, Franny.
All right. This was kind of the down and dirty of New York City Marathon. Very happy you were here to join. Again, the replay will be sent out after this. And just very excited to do this. I think when's the next Thursday? The first Thursday of November is actually this 5, 6, 7. All right, cool. So we're not missing that. Yeah. All right.
So it's the Thursday, 31st.
Yeah. So it's always the first Thursday of the month. Okay. So yeah. All right. So next time we speak, unless we do some special pop-up thing before the marathon, which don't put it past me, maybe we will, but until further notice, the next time we'll talk is the first Thursday again of each month, which in this case, it's November 7th. So until then.
Hold on, sorry. No, but well, not really a question, but just to reiterate, everyone's gonna get the Hard Rock email. Like our team is still kind of working on the planning and stuff. But everyone who's eligible to attend will definitely receive an email, probably either next week or the following week, with all the details and that fun stuff.
People will get all the info sent to them.
Yes.
If you have any questions, email nyc@achillesinternational.org.
Yes.
If you think you're not getting something that you should be getting or anything like that. All right, cool. It's been real, guys. I'm about to go talk to some folks. Hope you have an awesome Thursday and a great Yom Kippur tomorrow if you celebrate that. So see you around.